I come from Europe, where my family was always eating healthy, but we were also used to sort of in a food economy where it's small farms, everything is very fresh, everybody cooks for their families or themselves. And then I moved to America, and my friends are eating things from microwave dinners, freezers. Everything is this like weird preservatives ridden diet, and everyone's getting, I mean, it's just a fact. Everyone's getting more and more fat. We're having huge issues with our health, with cholesterol and, heart issues, diabetes. Obviously, that's impacting how sick people get with COVID. So can you touch on just giving a preview of what people will learn in your book about food and how government subsidies basically have defined the diet across the world, in the US, but also across the world, with soy and corn and all of that?
Yeah, I think the way that I put it in the book, my thesis is kind of twofold. On the one hand, we have the inflation is causing the prices of food to go up, and foods are the most important good that everybody consumes. Everybody has to eat. Everybody goes to the grocery store every day, and so they pay money for food. So inflation on food is the most politically sensitive issue. So everyone's always concerned about what's happening with food prices, and everyone's always, and governments are always concerned about trying to make sure that people aren't too angry about the rise in their food prices. So on the one hand, we have this force where governments are trying to do everything they can to make food prices not look too bad. And then on the other hand, the flip side of the coin is, where's that inflation coming from? It's coming from the government being able to finance whatever it wants. So on the one hand, the government has an incentive to try and stop you from noticing that the value or the price of food is going up. And on the other hand, the government has, because it's destroying your currency and making your food more expensive, it has a lot of economic power and resources, which it can use in order to essentially shape the realities of markets. And I use, the examples of food and education and energy, because, I chose those three because I think they're extremely important. They're things that I've studied very closely. But you could apply the same analysis to many other issues. But in both energy and food, we see the same dynamic, which is prices rise. Government has more money. Government intervenes in the market in order to try and hide the effects of its inflation, of its inflationary policies. And so with food, this has meant governments basically trying to promote as much as possible the cheap foods that don't rise a lot in price. And if you, and this is something that, I've been coming across for many years, because I got awakened on the food issue about 10, 15 years ago. And, I improved my health massively by simply realizing, just because something is in a supermarket, it doesn't mean you have to eat it. And once I became more conscious about that, and I started reading more, and, there's an enormous amount of literature out there right now that is emerging mostly because of the internet, not because of nutrition science, not because of universities and academia and nutrition professors who are still repeating the same dogma that government wants. But, because of the internet, it's allowing everybody all over the world to experiment and report their experiments. And we're seeing patterns emerge. We see Facebook groups with millions of people from all over the world reporting regularities. I stopped eating this form of highly processed, cheap junk, and this health problem went away, and that health problem went away. So, these stories add up, and we see the trend in them, and we see how much, you can you can connect the dots, and you can see how much money and effort and subsidies and government policies have gone into promoting those foods. So on the one hand, you have the dietary guidelines telling everybody that you should eat this and eat that, and basically telling people to eat all of the stuff that is that has low price elasticity, the stuff that involves a lot of industry And so therefore, when there's inflation, that stuff's price doesn't rise. So corn, soy, sugar, flour, and I think perhaps the most pernicious is seed oils, which are absolutely devastating. And they've just been normalized as food because all over the world, doctors and nutritionists start telling you, well, this is low fat and it's better than animal fat. And it's insane because all cultures everywhere in the world, and that's where I bring in some of the literature that I've read on nutrition, which is also kind of very similar to the Austrian school in that it is not mainstream. It's not taught in nutrition schools. It's not taught in universities, but it's extremely coherent and extremely powerful. And really, it's been life-changing for me. All over the world, all cultures base all of their diets on animal fats. It's the one dietary constant everywhere in the world. Everybody has to live on animal fats. There are no cultures that don't eat animal fat. It's never existed. And yet we're told that this is bad, and we're told that the alternative, which is highly processed industrial poison, it's essentially industrial waste, canola oil and all of these things, they're industrial waste that they've managed to make slightly less poisonous so that they don't kill you straight away when you eat it. It kills you slowly and then allows you to generate a lot of profits for the medical industrial complex, which is another huge fiat issue, which I did not get into in the book because, there's only so much you can write in one book. So all of these things, you see them, governments are, first of all, telling people to eat the cheap stuff. They're heavily subsidizing the cheap stuff producers, and they're trying to force people to eat all of this industrial junk. You combine all of those things, and that's how you end up with, I think, this current health catastrophe where I think it's something like 90% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, which is insane. I think 88% is the number that I last heard.